My name is Haikal. I'm the Southeast Asia head at Telum Media. Ibrahim, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Haikal, for having us. And of course, to the thousands of folks tuning in, welcome. I hope this is going to be beneficial for you guys as it is for me.
Thank you. I'd just like to ask you, I'm sure PRs right now are still coming to you and your team pitching story ideas during this time. What are some of the things that PRs should definitely avoid? Do you have some examples, good or bad, maybe good ones? How they were done?
I'm just a bit upset that I can't vote. It says hosts and panelists can't vote the poll. So I got to now log in using a guest ID. Haikal, you're right. You're right. Let me tell you how different COVID-19 is. For Astro AWANI, we pride ourselves in breaking news. In Malaysia, there are more, better established media out there in terms of getting the sustained numbers. But when it comes to breaking news, AWANI is always at the forefront. Be it the missing MH370, the downing of MH17, the change of government that Malaysia has seen for the first time ever, because we tend to call ourselves a democracy, but first time in 60 years. We changed governments, and apparently we don't have enough of that. We changed the government yet again earlier this year because one, it's never enough. The difference here with COVID-19 is that the lines between TV and web is now blurred. We don't know who is on which team now, at least for AWANI. And within TV, we have the news team, we have the breaking news team, as well as the current affairs team, which tend to take things a little bit longer. But right now, we don't know who's who, right? And largely because when it comes to breaking news, there seems to be an end to it. There seems to be the finality of the story. For MH17, it was the burial, for instance, of those that were the victims of the plane disaster. When we changed government in 2018, the moment the Prime Minister swore in, that's done. We kind of know that the election mood is over. Let's get on to our business. The problem with this time round is that COVID-19 is not going to end, even if we get a vaccine out. Because, people tend to talk about, the vaccine is about 12 months away or 18 months away. Remember, vaccine 18 months away is just discovery, right? There's still clinical trials. There's still a rollout period of production, right? And when you distribute after the production, you distribute it wholesale, you distribute retail. And then there's, of course, the fiasco at the US government not funding WHO. Will WHO still be around? Or will, say, for instance, Bill Gates continue to fund WHO? There's so many stories that come about with this, right? We have to draw down the global landscape of the COVID-19 story, and we have to think about the local stories that is right there in front of my street. So how do we go about and tell these kind of stories? And that's where PR companies have to rise up and shine. Why? Because you're right, Haikal, that is a good prelude. There are two types of PR companies right now that knock on my doorstep virtually. The first type is, hey, I have this company, they're selling this product. Are you happy to get them on? You can literally ask them about anything. That's the kind of the pre-COVID, the before times days of doing things, right? You can't go and pitch. You got to listen to what the market wants right now, which moves to the second type of PR companies that takes the tone of what is happening right now. COVID-19 is not just about the countries that we're in, whether or not we're in Thailand or Malaysia or Singapore, or Indonesia, or wherever you guys are listening in from this particular webinar. COVID is a global issue, but it is impacting the local stories. And that's why one company, for instance, Axiata, for instance, it's a big telco company in Southeast Asia. It's one of the biggest here in Malaysia. They say, all right, I have a story, Ibrahim. I want to talk about the financial assistance of COVID-19 customers. So I could use that as a way in, right? So that if my interview with the CEO of Axiata Digital, for instance, is 100%, maybe the 20-30% is talking about the financial assistance of COVID-19, and then the next 30% or 40% is talking about how they themselves, Axiata themselves, are acclimatizing to COVID-19, and then the pitch comes in, right? That the last 40% or the last 30%, which talks about, okay, this is Axiata, this is what we do, please buy our products more from us. I understand that's the idea, right? But we serve both purposes. We bridge the stories. They want to sell their products. I want a story, at least a story about COVID-19. And I don't just want to talk about WHO and Bill Gates and Trump and all that. I really want to talk about the street vendors, the fruit vendors, the nasi lemak sellers that can't get their products out because nobody's walking down the street that can't buy products from them. How are their lives about? So that is the kind of mismatch that we need to close really further. One of the panelists just now was talking about internal communications versus external communications. That's true, right? You can't tell your people internally, okay, we're going to talk about this thing only. And then when the press comes in and says, okay, what do you think about this particular idea? Or, how do you think the government's approaching this? Or what do you think private companies can do to help? And then you give another pitch. That just breeds dishonesty, and that just proves that you guys are not willing to talk about the hard issues. And if you guys are not willing to talk about the hard issues, then how are press, people like me, broadcast, are going to have you on? It's very difficult for me to have you on because you guys are not talking about the real issues. And the real issues doesn't have to be state secret or corporate secret that you guys can't release. And if you say this, and therefore the competitors will now like emulate your product or copyright the product, whatever. It's not about that. People want talking heads. That's just the whole idea. And it's enough for, Astro is paying me my salary, but I can only talk so much. I can't talk for like 24 hours a day. I have to get somebody else to talk about this issue. And mind you, health is something that is so further away from me in terms of knowledge, discipline. I really don't know what to talk about when it comes to health, but I do know what to ask, because the best person to ask about health pandemics and stuff like that is people like me that have zero knowledge about health situation, right? And that's why I need people to bounce ideas off. And I don't have to talk to doctors and deans and all the other researchers all the time. I want to talk to corporates out there, because mind you, how long are we going to run this COVID-19 story? We have to run it now because it's important. But we are so tired of it. Don't tell me you're not lethargic about the whole situation. Stefan from Bangkok was talking about one newsroom, AFP, around the world is talking about the same thing. And mind you, we do tap news resource from AFP because we are a supplicant of AFP. Now, imagine that otherwise are doing the same thing. Reuters is doing the same thing, Bloomberg, whatever. And locally, we have Bernama, the local news agency. Everybody talks about the same thing. And if everybody talks about the same thing, everybody is listening to the same thing. And if everybody is listening to the same thing, what else is new? And that's where PR companies got to rise up and talk about something new.
I'd like to maybe not waste any time, but go to the ones which are heavily upvoted. The first one is here from Maxine Lim, asking, is there still media appetite at this stage to continue covering business as usual with corporate news? And what's the best way of engaging the media whilst under quarantine? Because there's maybe a rise of virtual press conferences and interviews. Ibrahim, maybe you can help us answer this.
I saw this exact question as well, Maxine. I think I know who you are. Thanks very much for tuning in. And I saw a lot of viewers coming in from Bhutan, from Guam. Shout out to you guys calling in from far and wide. You see, this is the story about COVID-19. Everybody is talking about, or previously, everybody's talking about a borderless world. That's all BS until right now. Today, we see a globalized audience, and we talk about a little bit about the worthiness of a particular news agency. It's not just about the consumption of people inside that country. From others, we also tap into each other's news as well. For instance, AWANI continuously look into AFP news for stories in Thailand. AWANI still talks to CNA a lot about other events and ongoings in Singapore. We talk to Kompas in Indonesia. So, we can only talk to one or two guys from a particular country in order for us to actually understand what's going on there. But to answer the question that Maxine posed, business as usual, we want business as usual stories. We really do. But business as usual doesn't mean it was like the same as before. The usual right now is this whole new norm phrase that is so overly used. In fact, a colleague of mine, Sharat, was talking about the new normal. It's like a catch to go to phrase like Davos or WEF or I 4.0. It's like a cliche, but it is. That's what cliches are. It just means that you gotta adapt to the new thing. So business as usual for companies is not the same as today. Is not the same as business as usual for companies as before. And what is the new business as usual for you guys today? That is the story that we want to tap into. And it's not about COVID-19 per se. It's still going about your business, trying to catch that bottom line and trying to make the best out of the really horrible situation. So what is that story about? And you're right. Just now we were talking about if you're a corporate and you say you don't know the answer now, and therefore you might be honest about it. We have no answer now, but we're getting back to that later. That is a valid response. So for instance, the internet provider in Malaysia, TM, is actually overwhelmed by the amount of volume of internet usage in the country, and they were heavily capitalized in big towns in Kuala Lumpur, in Johor Bahru, just north of Singapore, in Penang. Right now, even places in Sabah and Sarawak and Borneo, the usage of internet is spiking up. So TM came out and said, you know what, we have had a big highway for internet usage, but that highway we placed somewhere in the towns, not so much in the urban. Now we have to rethink about how to use that proper bandwidth for the rest of the country, because everyone is now locked down, or whatever you call it, circuit breaker, whatever that's another thing. I don't understand why governments want to shy away from using that lockdown phrase. But anyway, be honest about the situation, because mind you, people know the situation. They know it outright. They have a gut feeling about what the situation is. The only question is whether or not the corporates want to own up and admit that that is the situation. Now, if you guys do, own up and say, that's the situation, we planned it before because of certain, ideas that we had, because of certain assumptions before, now we are reorganizing or reorienting our products to fit the new norm, then so be it. That is the kind of response that we want. That is the kind of business as usual that we want moving forward. So yes, we want BAU stories, but the BAU stories of today is not the same as BAU stories of before.
Right. This is from Nora Atika. Thanks so much for your question, Nora Atika. You talk about positive content, focusing on positive content. Do you think that virtual brand or product-focused events would be of interest to the media during these challenging times, especially Ramadan and Hari Raya, Idul Fitri is coming, as a content alternative? Or should they stick to simpler content like press releases to save the media time and resources?
Yeah, I also saw this particular question, and it was indeed an interesting story to actually, an interesting question to actually approach. You see, Ramadan is a big deal, not just in Malaysia, but also, of course, in Indonesia as well. And in Singapore, the Muslim community is having a tougher time there because of the closure of mosques. Even your Prime Minister was talking about the fact that he can't go to, buy murtaba or whatever, right, from the bazaar Ramadan there in Singapore. So it's going to be a big deal, and that's happening at this weekend, right? And when you talk about a spiritual event, for instance, the mass that happened in Vatican, and Andrea Bocelli was singing, in an empty Vatican city, that moved a lot of hearts. Not just the Catholics, but everyone around the world, right? Masjid Haram was closed, is closed. There is no more Umrah that is being done, and now there's talks of even Hajj being cancelled. All this strikes not just at the day-to-day belief of an individual; it strikes at the literal belief of an individual, right? And that's when it really hits home, because a lot of people have faith in this part of the world, and when that faith is currently being challenged, that is going to bring about that sense of urgency of how do we go about solving this problem together. And in that light, we have to start answering that question collectively. How do we solve this problem together in order for us to get some semblance of normalcy back again? Friday prayers have not been able to be carried out in around the world for the past 5-6 weeks already. In KL, it's been close to, 7 weeks? No Friday prayers? That's just bizarre. I mean, my dad has been around for quite a bit, and he has never had the need to talk about, the closure of, he was talking about, during the Malayan emergency, where the people killing in the streets of KL in 1969. Even then, the masjid was not closed, but now it is. So that's the urgency of that solving the question together. Now, if we start to solve this question together, then it becomes a positive story. See, a positive story is not just about, you know, going into la la land and living in a vacuum and not talking about the things that needs to be talked about. A positive story is about solving a problem together collectively. The big deal right now is on the movement control order in Malaysia. We're now moving into the 4th phase eventually. We're now currently in the 3rd phase. And people are not complying any longer. People were very compliant in the 1st phase, 2nd phase. I'm talking about the first month of the lockdown. But right now, people are not compliant anymore. Why? It's not just about the fact that they need to go about and do their job and earn money and put food on the table. It's because they're bored. That whole cabin fever thing is happening. But doing so is endangering not just themselves, but everybody else in the country. That needs to be talked about. And if we do talk about it, not punishing them or anything, but just talk about it on the need and on the fact that all of us need to comply with the lockdown because of what, these 2 reasons or 4 reasons, then it becomes a positive story. And brands can come in and join in the fun, right? We're talking about food delivery services. We're talking about e-commerce businesses, people like Lazada, Shopee, whatever you name it. They all play a key role right now. So why don't they talk about these stories, right? The kind of things that they are delivering to people's homes, the kind of merchandises that people are ordering more these days versus, you know, versus before. Those kind of stories need to be talked about. One interview that I did early, so I'm just gonna wrap this up, but one story that I did was on My Grocer. They're a startup. They deliver fresh food products in Malaysian houses. And they were talking about some of the groceries that they did it for free because some people do not even have the cash to buy those kind of food. So that is a positive story. Yes, it's wrapped around the COVID-19 story. And yes, it does wrap around the whole idea of, you know, feel-good moment that they're helping out. But it's still spoken in the context of COVID-19, which is essential. Everybody needs to talk about this right now because this is the only thing that needs to be talked about.
This is from Madavi, who's asking, what kind of sensitivity are you applying to your story writing and your coverage right now when it comes to revenue figures? So, you know, this makes for a good story if it's business as usual, but, you know, mass job losses or potential cost-cutting measures are worrying, but publications love the figures, right? So how do you treat this during this time?
You know, sometimes it's as vanilla as that. The thing happened, we report it, and therefore you deal with it. There's also some added nuances that we have to add. So for instance, the Director General of Health in Malaysia, every day he comes on, you know, national TV at 5 o'clock to talk about the daily increase or decrease in numbers, the active cases, the people that are being discharged from the hospitals, many more. But there's also the thing that sometimes he talks about at length and people still don't get. For instance, the kind of testing that is being done in Malaysia. And he only has so much airtime to use in terms of explaining that particular situation. So the sensitivity or the tag that we have to carry on forward when telling this story is that we have to help him by explaining to the public the reason why testing is being done in this way in Malaysia. Singapore has done a lot of coverage in terms of, not coverage of news stories, but in terms of testing per capita of the population. South Korea has done the same thing. Malaysia, by contrast, we're not testing enough if you look at from the sense of how Singapore and South Korea and, for instance, Hong Kong does it, right? It's not enough. But why do we believe that is the right way or the necessary number to do it? So we have to help the public, we have to help the Director General of Health by explaining to the public why the decision was done. And of course, you know, we explain it to a layman, explaining it to a layman, that's the best way of doing it, right? But we want to make sure that how we are explaining it doesn't get lost in the translation or we didn't misunderstand the Director General of Health. So we also have to do a lot of due diligence, cross-check with each other and make sure that the story that we want to tell is indeed the lowest common denominator story that needs to be told without altering the facts. And there is no editorial liberty at all. We just want to tell the necessary story so that the layman kind of understands why the Director General of Health says that. And because of this, we do take into liberty and exercise some form of editorial discretion. But this is a dangerous path to take. That's what I'm trying to say. So that's why, you know, I started off this whole sales pitch of reporting versus current affairs, and right now we're muddled in between. That's where we are right now. This is to use we communications term, just now business unusual. This is how we have to blend between the two.
Ibrahim, you made obviously a lot of points on some advice and examples. Have you got one very important one that you'd like to emphasize?
I have one advice, which is PR practitioners out there. You are actually helping the business desk. Any newsroom requires the help of business desk, but we are not PR. Therefore, we can't deal with your BS, right? So you got to give us the story right on the point. And the 2 points earlier made by my earlier colleagues just now was actually on point. Number one, no BS, and Jamie was talking about the timing, right? 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 9 p.m. it's just horrible. Really, it is, you know. And I have to deal with my, you know, my kids as well, right? I put them to bed and all that. So you got to factor that in, right? But because of time constraint, I'm happy to continue this chat on my Twitter. So if you guys want to continue on having this kind of chat, I'm happy to deal with this on Twitter post conversation of this.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, once again. Until next time, stay safe. Do take care. Bye-bye.